So let's introduce ourselves. I'm a senior solution architect at CSI, specialising in public cloud and digital workspace strategy. I've been with CSI for over 7 years and have 15 years experience plus around hybrid cloud solutions for clients and ISVs. For me, as an SA, AI brings loads of opportunities. For instance, I'm looking forward to Azure Copilot and its capability to look for misconfiguration within the tenant and getting AI responses on how to remediate with options via code, policy, or command line. But more on that soon. And from an M365 point of view, enhancing how we use our data and reducing the time it takes to find things and how to produce solution documentation in less than half the time. And I'm sure my boss will be pleased with that. Yatindra, do you want to introduce yourself?
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Mike. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. So a bit of background about myself. I have been working in the Microsoft ecosystem for close to 20 years. And like Mike as well, I'm really excited by the things that Copilot is going to bring within that Microsoft estate. And I've been in previous lives building and breaking and fixing, as well as teaching some of the great things that you can do, but also making sure that people leverage the correct ways of doing things and understand where to get the best out of the Microsoft ecosystem. So for me, I think there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be talking about of not only how you get into Copilot, but also how you can then make the most out of it. There's some really good links towards the end, and we'll kind of bring in all the wonderful experience that Mike and myself have over the kind of work we've done. Back to you, Mike.
Okay. Do you want to forward to the next slide then, please?
So who is CSI? Is this the right slide?
Hasn't forwarded on my screen. Is it definitely forwarded, the slide?
For me it has.
Can anyone else see? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I can see it.
Yeah, we've got a yes. Okay, right. So for those of you that don't know CSI that well, CSI has been providing managed services for over 40 years across many business sectors, both in the UK and globally. Our managed services are specialists, and we deal with complex, secure workloads in public, private cloud, and on-premise environments. We also have a security operations center and data protection team to protect clients' data services, whether managed by CSI or the customer. As you can see, we are protecting over 132 petabytes of data across our clients, with some very large environments being monitored. We also modernize and migrate clients to cloud services like M365, Azure, AWS, and IBM Cloud. We are a Microsoft partner, currently holding an infrastructure designation and AVD specialization, and working towards achieving more designations. If we don't have it now, we partner with someone that does and jointly deliver projects. CSI is more than a Microsoft house. We've achieved many technology recognitions, including IBM Platinum Partner, and we are also experts in cybersecurity and data protection technologies. Yatindra, next slide.
So who are AvePoint? So for those that don't know who AvePoint are, we were founded in New Jersey, in Jersey City, and since the first iteration of SharePoint, which was codenamed Tahoe, we've been working within the Microsoft ecosystem, not only to build out migration technology, but also to look after the data once it's been taken into the Microsoft stack. And we have more than 9 million cloud users spread across 88 countries, across 7 continents. So not only do we have a local presence in most of the geographies that we serve, but we've won numerous awards, and we pride ourselves on building our solutions with privacy in mind. So we're ISO certified, and we make sure that it allows you the right level of granularity in terms of control, but also looking at the wider picture in terms of lifecycle management, and all the great stuff that we're going to be talking about today will kind of highlight in this webinar. But again, more than 1,800 employees across the globe. And we are really passionate about SaaS operations, and it's been kind of an innovation curve that's gone very steep very quickly. And we love to build, again, new features and functions within the technology that Microsoft provides. So that's a quick overview in AvePoint. I will go to the next slide. So this is a slide that highlights one of the kind of partnerships that CSI and AvePoint worked on through the middle of last year, around a migration that we did together, which was for Kingston University. And this was around moving from Box to M365. And migration, as we'll touch upon as we go forward, is one of these things where you want to make sure that you have not only a really good understanding of what's in the architecture of your current environment, but also making sure that it moves to the right kind of governance model in M365. And again, overcoming challenges that the university had there. Any points you want to talk about, Mike, on this one?
I'll just say, it's a success project that we worked on together, and obviously the case study, shows that, that there was a lot of great outcomes from that project.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah, I get, sorry, Yatin, I was going to say I can't see the slides changing, but I've got the slides in the background here anyway. I think it's the Copilot and AI slide. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Brilliant. All right. So today we are focusing on getting ready for M365 Copilot, but this is just one of many Copilots on the market with the likes of Dynamics, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Azure, to name a few. So M365 Copilot is your productivity tool that works alongside you in Microsoft 365 applications, including your favorites, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Teams. Microsoft's new AI tool efficiently helps you work by undertaking tasks such as drafting documents, summarizing text and meetings, and finding information on the user's behalf. You can also build your own Copilot through OpenAI and attach your own company data. If your focus is on OpenAI, we can facilitate meetings with Microsoft and other partners to get into the detail. Whatever Copilot you are using, there is a security concern around your data and it falling into the wrong hands. We will discuss today ways to mitigate that risk AI brings and keep your data secure. There are also learnings from the M365 early adoption program that we have insight into. For instance, how to be better prepared, how to navigate InfoSec requirements, responsible deployments, where to deploy, and what controls are needed. This is an exciting time in which CSI and AvePoint can help you now with your M365 and OpenAI strategy. Yatindra, back to you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mike. So and some really good points there around AI and how you can not only use what's provided but also build your own. This slide around unlocking the opportunity ahead was actually published March last year, and we're going to go through some of these things in a bit more detail. But the whole thing around automation, making sure that we understand what kind of tasks and things we're doing, but also understanding that from different levels within the organization. So in terms of executives, they were thinking last year that 80% of tasks can be assisted by AI, where we can either speed things up if we're doing monotonous things over and over again. Like, for example, we're doing a presentation today. Me creating a PDF is probably not the best use of my time. And if I could then create a bot to then allow me to do that at scale, it will probably free up more time. So things like that, where you're doing things on a regular basis, but you want to then leverage the power of AI, not only to do those kind of simple tasks, but also then to connect other areas. And as we go through the architecture of what Copilot allows us to do, and especially using the Graph API, it allows us to connect into not only the workspaces we're in, but also the content. There may be many multiple sources that you have access to that you could be spending a long time kind of collating. And so that's where understanding, the initiatives, looking at how to optimize the time that we're spending collating this information, creating new content as well, is where organizations can thrive. And it's then building into that how we can then optimize our time. Going forwards, in terms of, what is Copilot all about? We're going to ask you a poll question in a couple of minutes, but this is to give you an understanding of, where it fits in is there'll be a Copilot button per app, as Mike mentioned, around Outlook or PowerPoint, Word, etc., and even Excel, where you can ask it, natural language questions, and it will not only be able to understand what you're asking in terms of context, but it will then give you really great summaries or answers, behind that. A couple of scenarios that we are highlighting in the video here is where you might be either composing an email, you might be even summarizing. So maybe Mike and myself were talking about the agenda for today's webinar. That could be over, a number of emails. And instead of me having to kind of go through each and every single piece, we can ask the Copilot, summarize this into 5 bullet points or 10 bullet points or things like that. And it allows us to, again, spend that time to just review and summarize the key elements that are found within there. In terms of price, and again, Mike will go into this in some detail, but it's $30 a user per month for the corporate license. There is a pro version of Copilot as well, which is more for your individual usage or within a personal space, and again leverages the same technology within there. There's kind of different elements to how you need to turn this on, and we're going to discuss a few of these, but also share how you can then build that out. And there's really great resources that have been published that are available that we'll also cover. So hope that gives you an overview. Mike, any points from yourself before we kind of ask the first
just
question?
on the Copilot Pro, it is individual use, and I think it's good if you wanted to test it out, but it doesn't come with all the back end security that comes with the full Copilot product, which would obviously use your M365 inbuilt security. So yeah, back to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. So the kind of things that we've been having conversations with clients as well as partners is there's a kind of an expected benefits. So we expect certain things to come out once we deploy Copilot, and they are as you can see on the slide here, so deeper and more relevant search results. Now, there's a couple of key aspects to this, and it's making sure around data quality is in a good state. So we've got to make sure that we not only understand what we allowing Copilot to search and to extract, as we then define those parameters, but it's making sure that it's only showing the relevant things. And we'll go into some of the key things around this, because if we turn Copilot on, and we don't, for example, mandate specific guardrails, we could end up with loads of similar looking content, but we wouldn't be able to recognize which is the correct one. And if you look at an HR department, for example, and if someone's creating policies, how do you interpret which one is correct? So understanding that context and making sure that whatever we're kind of feeding it allows us to then see the correct results, and it's making sure that the actionable responses and the things that are relevant is top of mind. Building that out across the tenancy, group, and user protections is super important. And again, there are controls that you can put in place to make sure that we only allow certain scopes to be part of the crawl that takes place, and then the elements that are built in for Copilot, including the semantic index, etc., which is where all these things get collated, only has good information in there, which would mean that when we then query, and we'll show you an example of a kind of Copilot that AvePoint have built around this, gives you good results as the end of it. And we want to make sure that AI-assisted creativity, productivity, automation is at the forefront of these things. Now, how does that reflect to the key considerations around here? Well, storage is probably predominantly top of mind for organizations that have, a lot of growth in terms of the storage allowance they're using, but also if, for example, you are creating content and you're maybe a media company, and I'm going to go into this in a couple of slides time, where the kind of growth of data is huge from what we've seen, and making sure that we keep that under control. We only keep what we need, whatever is relevant, and how to define what relevant means for organizations is super important. And making sure that we only keep what we need, so we don't then search for things that could be 5 years out of date, for example. Data privacy, between myself and Mike, we're going to talk in a lot of detail around this, and security and compliance, because these are super, super important to make sure that internally and externally, if we're sharing content or looking through these things, we are putting the right guardrails up. And by guardrails, we mean that we allow you to play the game that you're looking to play. But the analogy there is, if we're, say, for example, bowling, you want to make sure that everyone is successful at what they're looking to do, but they don't go steering off course. And adoption is key. Adoption for any new way of doing things is super important. So not only understanding, engaging, what does good look like, or what could be the goal, but also making sure that we take a stepwise approach to that, and making sure that we have a regular understanding of what the adoption is looking like, and making sure that we leverage all the great people that we have within the workforce, because Copilot is typically not used in isolation. You have usually a whole bunch of people that are going to be using this and allowing you to then proliferate that through the organization. I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is going to be around the Chat AVPT demo. So Chat AVPT is the Copilot that we've created internally at AvePoint. And what this recording is going to show you is how I can chat with this. Now, in terms of background, how we've created it is there's a whole bunch of technology that we offer as AvePoint, and if we take ourselves through the eyes of a new hire, there may be questions that we're burning to ask, but it might be the middle of the night, like I did the recording yesterday, as you'll see, or there might be other things where we don't want to pester our key stakeholders that may be busy in meetings and everything else, but we want to make sure that we can answer questions quickly and efficiently, and we also want to make sure that we have the latest and greatest in terms of information. So the example I'm going to show you is, I'm logging into Teams here, and I'm having a chat with Chat AVPT, which is an app, and I can, say hello. I can ask it different things, and it's going to interpret my questions, and then it's going to give me answers on that. So I'm going to ask it a very rudimentary question on how can AvePoint assist with Copilot readiness. Now, in our case here, what it's going to do, it's also going to look through the user guides that we have, as well as the case studies. It's going to combine all those things together, and it's going to give me not only how we can help organizations, but it's also going to give me citations. So I can then go through, and if I want to look in detail to any of those areas, I can then go through and do this. Now, in terms of what this is looking through, and the kind of architecture, again, we'll share the kind of detail around this, but what it's looking through is actually all the things that we've collated, building that into how I then want to look through this, and it's going to give me 4 bullet points in terms of how I can not only look at it as a stepwise approach, but it's looking into detail. So we've got data preparation, making sure that we have good quality, and it's across SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, OneNote, etc. To make sure that the accuracy is there. So the data quality, data preparation is super important. Then we go into data security to make sure that we don't have any potential risks. And then it's highlighting, whoops, we don't want to do that just yet. So let me play that again from here. And the third point, which should appear in a second, is around operations optimization, to make sure that once we've turned it on, we've kind of got it working. How do we make sure that it continues to work in an efficient way? And then the compliance elements around this could be if you're, for example, looking at regulatory aspects such as GDPR, HIPAA, etc. How do you make sure you put the right guardrails in place, which could be additional to the standard ones that you have, and to make sure that you bake that into how you're going to be delivering that for your end users. Okay, I think we are up on time on the first poll. So I'll just ask Layla, who's kind of behind the curtains, if you could start the first poll, please. And what we're asking you as an audience here is, where are you on your Copilot journey? So the key things here, what we want to understand is, have you, for example, started preparation? Is this kind of the first, attending this webinar, is this the first kind of preparation that you're doing? Or is it the case that you've kind of already thought about it and maybe you're waiting in duty free, or you're looking at the security gates? So we want to understand, where are you in your Copilot journey? And to get an understanding of that from the members there. I think we've got close to 85 attendees, so it'd be great if you could turn the poll on, Leila, and we can then get the reaction from the audience.
We might have the webinar gremlins in the background. Can you see the poll? Or was it just me that can't see it?
I can see it.
Sorry, it should be there now. Yeah. I had to rebuild it on the fly because all of our preparation fell apart.
No worries.
Live demos, gotta love them.
Hey, yes. So thanks, Dion, as well. Yeah, so what you should see is a dialog box, and if you could pick where you are within the within your Copilot journey, and we'll give you maybe a minute to do that. While we're waiting for you to answer, these stickers were generated through Designer. Now, Designer is a really great tool that Microsoft have created, and it's using AI in the background, where you kind of give it a prompt, and you basically say, I want a picture of, in my case, I used a pilot as an example, and I kind of said, like, if they're preparing, they've got their bags ready, and they're looking to go on this Copilot flight, can you generate a sticker for this? Now, Designer not only allows you to build stickers like this, images, backgrounds, but it can do a complete branding exercise as well. So if you're within marketing, or you're looking to improve your kind of marketing experience, this will allow you to do this at scale. Some of the results I got were terrible, but I think a lot of them were really good once I understood, good ways of prompting. And prompting is one of these things where there's examples that we'll show towards the end from Microsoft in terms of guidelines around prompting, but it's making sure that we ask the question in the right way. So if I, for example, said, give me a view from the pilot perspective on a side-on view with a valley in the background, this is the kind of picture that would generate. Whereas someone standing at the security gates, I think some of you with eagle eyes will notice even the word security here is actually not detailed properly. So there's a couple of things in there that you need to kind of work on with the prompting to get the best results out. But as we develop the elements within Copilot, that will allow us to kind of go on from there. Let me just go one slide back. And let's have a look at the results. So, Mike, can you see the results of the poll?
Yeah. No, we've got some good responses there. So 65 responses, 60% are preparing and packed, 12% and waiting in duty free, 10% that's security gate. It's good to see 12% are in flight. That's really good news. And there's 4% that have crash landed. And obviously, there might be some. Well, they might want to talk to us to help them with their crash landing and what happened there. So we'd be interested to discuss that with you. But yeah, good, excellent.
Awesome, brilliant. Thanks for participating. Let's continue. So, in terms of accelerating Copilot success and what this typically allows us to look at now, in terms of growth and data growth, I think I mentioned that there's a lot of content that's generated even before we have Copilot turned on, right? If you take a photo, that's going to be an X number of megabytes, and that could be per second that we're creating this. Now, if this is within a work environment, it then means that we've got to not only look making sure that we only keep what's relevant, but we also get rid of what's not needed. Now, I used to be a hoarder, and I think a lot of these traits come from where we typically need to make sure that we are very efficient in what we do. And I think in the work that we do in terms of information, dealing with knowledge, and making sure that what we have is a struggle that a lot of us face. Right, so we need to understand what is relevant, what needs to be kept, and it's typically driven by organization policy, maybe regulatory policy that we kind of abide by. The other points on this slide is around making sure that the right levels of permissions are granted as well. So if I'm working within a team, maybe we've got a kind of a virtual team with myself, Mike, and other areas. We need to make sure the right permissions are there. So we don't allow data to leak and kind of cause catastrophic damage, which could result in regulatory fines and those kinds of things. But we want to make sure that those people that should have access again do. So understanding, what does that kind of risks does that pose is super important. But also the last one, and I think that number should hopefully get less as time goes on, is a lack of clear strategy for AI. Now, there's a number of things that have gone on in the last year. I think there's some really good ethical elements that are within AI in terms of how we should be doing things. And a lot of organizations have now built that into their digital practices. So not only should there be a good understanding of what's there, but we want to make sure that there's a clear strategy for us to work with. And in terms of understanding that, right, we don't know what we don't know. So this is talking about kind of where you are within the organization, maybe you understand what you are doing within the team, etc., that you have visibility of. However, as we go further down, if it's within the department, you may not know everything that's going on there. And especially in terms of, when we look at the wider scope, there may be a lot of dark data. And dark data is, something that we need to make sure we can unravel. And it could be either part of a migration. It could also be Copilot Readiness, where we're looking to understand, what shape is that? How deep is it? What kind of things are lurking in the under the water that could potentially come and bite us? So it's getting an understanding of that. And it's making sure that we not only tackle that, but we also make sure that we don't get, for example, overhead charges for keeping that for a long time. We're speaking to one of my colleagues that comes from a legal background, and he was saying a lot of organizations now typically have a boundary 5, 10, 20 years. But anything before that, they will just literally remove. That will then make sure that they're then, clearing themselves of that risk. But it's also making sure that that is efficient in what they're doing. Now, it depends on which industry and which kind of area you're working within, because it might not suit everyone. But there are different strategies that we can build in within here. So I guess it's a question for, we've got another poll in lurking in the background, but question for Mike first, I guess, is, when you're speaking to customers, do they typically understand where the content sits for when we talk about Copilot readiness? And maybe we can then build that into the second poll.
Yeah, I think our clients do, but I think as we're discussing today, I think the main problem is how Copilot will interact with that data and where it sits, and is it all secure, and then particularly around access to it. So yeah, should we go with the next question? Yeah, on the poll. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. So the question here is, do you know where your data is held in M365? And we're looking for here like a one or a couple word answers to give us an indication if you understand, for example, where it sits. No, we got no as the first answer. That's great. So
maybe I was wrong. Yeah.
No. So there's a couple of things, and again we can see answers coming through here. But M365 itself is made up of many different kind of workloads that are put together, and we want to get an understanding if you know what those are. If they're not, again, we can cover them in some detail, and it may be a follow-up session that we can build around this. But the key aspects of where should we be making sure that we apply the right levels of security, and which areas should be focusing on as part of this. There are a couple of I guess bonus points if they come up as a response, because there's some newer ones that have been turned on because of Copilot. You have to actually have those areas on, which I'll talk about as well. So I'll just give you maybe a minute more to answer if you know where the data is held within M365. Oh, brilliant. Okay, I can see there's a lot more answers now, 46 responses. Mike, any ones you want to highlight in there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were expecting SharePoint to be there in bold in the center, and obviously OneDrive, being part of SharePoint, but again, where people's data is. But there's lots of interesting ones in here as well. Yeah, AWS Blob, for instance. Yeah. So yeah, no. Thank you for voting.
Absolutely. No, there's some really
good answers in.
I've put one in there around Loop. So Loop is one of these areas that you have to turn on for Copilot, and you have to make sure that that's enabled for the users that are looking into that. And Loop has got its own characteristics within working across what's called connected experiences that needs to be turned on for the interactions that you can do within Loop. But there's some really great answers. So thank you for participating. Let me move on to the next area around this. So in terms of unlocking Copilot and the success around strong data foundations is that we see this as almost like a 3-stage approach. The first is to make sure that we understand and centralize data integrity. And what we mean by this is making sure that we prepare accordingly. So not only do we have good data quality, but we then go into securing that. And the third element is to optimize. So there's this 3-step process. What this allows you to do in terms of preparation will be understanding the key groundwork elements. And this is, first of all, looking at if we're doing, for example, a migration where we want to maybe move away from a legacy platform into M365, then we can make use of the great things that Copilot brings in. So we can migrate from multiple platforms. I'm going to delve into a couple of challenges around this, because this is, again, faced by quite a few organizations where, people ask the question, do you want to migrate everything? Should I do a lift and shift and then kind of kick that can further down the road, or should we be putting effort into cleaning up as we migrate? Now, depending on how your organization is, you might have a pressing need just to get rid of the old file share that is costing you an arm and a leg just to kind of keep going. In other organizations, we've seen where they will do the due diligence on the data that's in the legacy area, understand what's there, figuring out the kind of mechanisms on how to then migrate, so breaking that down, and then also building in things like customizations and kind of making sure that if there's any hurdles, such as any throttling, etc., they understand what they are, they understand the level of work that needs to be done. But the way I typically talk about migration is almost like moving house, and you want it to be a one-time activity. So partners such as CSI will help you not only perform this migration, but also make sure that they bring their expertise. So again, you want to do this as a one-time activity, and you want to make sure you make the most of the great things in the destination through Copilot, building in a post-migration sustainable adoption plan, which is a bit of a mouthful, but what it means is once you've migrated, and it will be a change, you are taking your users through that journey, giving them an understanding of how to do it, but also giving them maybe small training videos, because it's a different way of driving maybe, and you might be now looking at switches that are on a different panel in a completely different area, but context and all those things can be built in as we perform these migrations. The other thing is context. In terms of the analysis that we do, allows you to have a really granular aspect of whatever it is you're looking to migrate. Understand how to identify protecting what's important, looking at the kind of different aspects of how that's going to impact the organization, and really making sure that you drive down the cost and increase the productivity as part of that interaction. I see there's questions coming in. I'm going to come back to that one, Andrew. Thank you. In terms of security, as we kind of go through those relevant areas. In terms of the migration tooling, we have been building out this platform for close to 20 years now. So there are some legacy areas in here that you'll notice, but also some of the newer ones. And again, we have capability, as we showed you with the example of Kingston University, where that was a box migration, but we're seeing a lot more tenant-to-tenant migrations, and even things like Power Apps and Power Automate, we can migrate from one tenancy to another. So that's looking at the migration side of things, but we also want to make sure that we understand the relevance of content and understanding, for example, if we do have this iceberg and we're looking to maybe rationalize that, what are the best ways of breaking that down into what is relevant and what isn't? And what I'm showing you in a screenshot here is the analysis that we can do, and we can see what is redundant, obsolete, and trivial. And ROT, as an acronym here, means that we can then say we only want to look at specific characteristics of the data or the corpus of data that we have. So it could be that you're looking at versioning. Now, in certain aspects of SharePoint, you can have unlimited versions, which could then be meaning that you have multiple gigabytes, terabytes of data that is no longer needed because you only need maybe a couple of versions. So we can trim down what is redundant, obsolete, trivial. There's different ways of, again, building that out into the analysis, and this will then allow you to see the total size, the file counts, as well as potential savings that you can then make as part of that process. Going forwards into identifying and enforcing content policies. Now, this is super important. And when we look into doing what we call a risk assessment, and I'll just zoom into the kind of reports that we can leverage and we can find out, it's looking at not only sensitive items, external users, as well as links, but we can also look at internal sharing as well. So if, for example, we have sharing that's going on internally, and we see that it's of a sensitive nature, we can then take immediate action. And the kind of scanning technology allows us to look through Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and groups. This is typically where the content is going to sit, but it allows us to also produce a matrix. And this is looking at the audience. And so number of people can be a way that we address that, where we can understand and we can break down the groups that have access to this content, allowing you to tier high, medium, and low based on that. And the other side of the matrix could be the exposure, so sensitivity, sorry. So sensitivity could be where you've got things like credit card numbers, you've got postcodes, etc. And those kinds of things can be built in here. So an admin or someone that's looking to deploy a Copilot can run an assessment. They can figure out what is top of mind. How should we, lock these things down using AIP and other things that myself and Mike were talking about, and we'll be talking about a bit later as well, is to, first of all, keep that under control, to make sure that we identify and we don't overshare what we shouldn't. That then takes us into cleaning up of permissions and policies as well. So this is working side by side, and there is intelligence that is built into this, where if we uncover certain kinds of things that could be the first kind of guardrails that you put up, it could be around enforcing external users, removing something called shadow users. Now, with SharePoint permissions, there is a way of you having access to an area, but you actually not doing anything. And if you're not performing an activity, we can kind of gauge that, and we can also highlight that. So this could be where we've done an assessment. We realize that someone's been added maybe 2 years ago. They've moved different departments, but they still have access to this area. Should they still have access? How are you going to define that? What kind of rules do you want to put in? Well, you can see the insights reports that are generated from this, and it will allow you to revoke access if it's needed, or grant access if, for example, they don't have it. This can also automate a lot of these things as well in the background. So it means that if we, for example, break inheritance, and now only one person has access to that super important document, how do you revert that? Those kinds of rules and policies can be baked into this. So hopefully that's answered your question, Andrew, and thanks, Henny, for chipping in there as well. In terms of going forwards, the way that this then builds into the compliance reporting is it then scans those policies on a regular basis, and to automate the kind of notification or fix that I mentioned across the key workloads, but also making sure that we build that into the key aspects of compliance. Going forwards into step 3. And the key kinds of things in here is making sure that once we've cleaned up our environment, the second part is building the guardrails. We then want to make sure we can then elevate what we've got. So in an ideal world, maybe this kind of thing could be a great example of how we are building the guardrails for Contoso Group. And in here, what you can see is internal external sharing is mandated. So we can actually put specific things in place that will then stay with that department structure, where there may be one or multiple workspaces that we're kind of governing, and in a particular way, saying that No external sharing is allowed. Internal sharing, for example, in HR is only to selected departments, because we don't want people being able to log into Copilot and then being able to search for things that they shouldn't have access to. We can also change that depending on, again, which department. So again, allowing where sharing is taking place, where, for example, we're looking to leverage that content, but we can also build in things like expiration. We can also look at things like retention. How long do we reckon the life cycle of these areas is going to be? And how often should we review as well? So the expiration here could be based on how quickly content changes within that department. How are we going to allow users to create a team, a group, or it could even be a workspace? Either we're going to allow everyone access, which again could mean central IT get a lot of requests, or it could be only individuals that are allowed to create. And making sure that we recertify on a regular basis is super important here as well. This is going now to how we're optimizing going forwards, where we review who's in there, not only the people, but also what permissions they have, what content they have access to. And if we then want to change that, we have the ability to do that. Typically, that's a data owner role that we can leverage as part of this because they will have context. So if Mike, for example, has created an area and I'm now a member within here, creating PowerPoints like I like to do, he can review this on a regular basis and say, look, Yatindra, you probably want to make sure that we take off Henny because now he's been promoted to another department and he no longer needs access. So these kinds of reviews we've kind of built in such a way that it allows us to not only work in the rhythm of the organization, but it also means that we don't need to ask technical questions from a business user. And what I'm showing you here is a questionnaire that we can then build to ask those questions. Okay, so what kind of access do you need? What are you looking to create? Is there already one area that we can reuse, or do you want to create a new one? But again, all within kind of business context. So depending on how you answer these, we can then take technical decisions based on that. Once we understand, what kind of things are required, we can then attach the right levels of compliance, governance on these things. So we understand how long it's going to need for this workspace. We can attach the concept of a lease to make sure it's only allowed for that amount of time, no more, no less. You can obviously extend these leases and things like that, but it really allows you to then have context. The second part of this is once we've created this area, not only do we have a review process, we can see who the owners are, we can see the statistics on the membership, we can see the activity that's going on here as well. So it's collating and combining all of these things into one space where the renewal, when we renew this specific area, in the example I was saying that Mike might have created this, he can then do within a number of minutes, within 5 to 10 minutes. Instead of me spending hours and hours going through, chasing up people, marking things in a calendar, etc. And the steps there are very quick. Again, very easy to change permissions, etc. That we see fit. So allowing you to apply the right business context as part of this. The other element to look into is expiration deletion, right? So we can look at the context that we have, and we can then also either archive content away from the live environment into maybe a storage area. This will allow you to incur less costs, but you can also leave things like stubs in place. So if people are looking to get that content that's been archived, it's very easy for them to be able to build something like that. And we can also build storage policies to make sure that we don't incur, again, the storage costs that we were talking about earlier. Going forwards, and this is probably the last bit before we kind of go into the questions side of things, and I'll pass to Mike for some bits he's going to talk about, is around adoption. And around Copilot adoption, what you can see here is an amazing dashboard where not only can we see the licensing that's been curated as part of this, but we can also see the adopted users within an organization. Now, Tygraph is an organization that AvePoint acquired about a year and a bit ago, and the key elements that we build on are really good data. And data points in terms of understanding where an organization is at, in terms of what they're actually doing within the tenancy. We can then look at overlaying maybe an HR kind of system around this, where we can look at different divisions, departments, how many people within global operations are actually using Copilot. That can be a really great understanding of, gauging how is the adoption going. Are we doing the right campaigns to build that out across the organization? And the other element around this is looking at the resources that's taking up, so we can see the content and also what percentage of adopted users we have across the board. So if, for example, you're looking to turn this on and you don't have Copilot at the moment, you can understand where your key influencers are already, and that could be a good way of building a champion network around the adoption of Copilot. So that's a kind of a whistle-stop tour, and I'm conscious that we're running out of time, so I'm going to pass to Mike in a second. But just to summarize, we're talking about 3 key elements around making sure data quality has been built out, we're building the right guardrails, and then going forwards, we are putting the right levels of governance in place. So what are the vital steps in terms of preparing your data, securing it, and then optimizing it is allowing you to have the short-term view, but also long-term in terms of getting the most out of what we can provide. So I'll pass on over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Yatindra. I'll try and go through this quickly, so because we've got a question there that's quite interesting that we'd like to answer. So how do you get the best out of your M365 and Copilot investment? How can CSI and AvePoint help you get the best value? So we can offer a consultancy-based M365 assessment where we can safely scan your environment for data and security readiness for Copilot. This will deliver insights and a remediation plan to get you ready. More about this assessment package we'll offer. We'll get out to you over the next few weeks. Having a data management solution that goes beyond the native capabilities of M365, like AvePoint solution, with the benefits Yatindra has shown us today. Also provide a service like AvePoint, which continually optimizes to improve efficiency and keeps you secure and compliant at all times. So to enable better insights and security awareness, there are some core features of M365 that configured correctly will get you ready for Copilot and assist you with your compliance, i.e. your data loss protection, information protection, etc. I've written a blog on these services, and there is a link in the useful link section later on. Do you want to go to the next slide, Yatindra? So this is the last one. So following the Microsoft announcement a few weeks ago, Copilot is now available under our CSP, and there are no user limits, and the cost is £24.70 per user per month. CSI can help demonstrate Copilot's functionality. We can show how Copilot integrates with Microsoft Graph and M365 apps and services such as the data. We want to discuss use cases with you and how to adopt a POC with champions and success criteria. We will use our expertise to plan out a POC and then how to deliver the outcome. Just to finish off from CSI, we'll continue to help clients with our consultancy and migration services, migrating or optimizing Office 365 with Copilot in mind. And nearly all our cloud engagements, we also supply cybersecurity services, and our solutions are based on zero trust, identity, and least privilege access. Our data protection services have expanded. We are assisting our clients with configuring services such as DLP, Azure information protection, data classification, and the extended compliance capabilities of Microsoft Purview. So if you want to go to the next slide, Yatindra.
Yep.
And I think this is a good point to stop for the questions and answers. So Andy's asked a question: if you allow Copilot to view SharePoint Teams data, does it take permissions automatically from the site Teams permissions? I mean, the user that accesses the Teams the team site, it's their identity that accesses it, and Copilot will use their identity to access the data. So if you're secure and your Teams is set up correctly, then that user shouldn't be able to see Teams sites that he doesn't have permission to see.
I agree with that completely, Mike. And I think the key elements is to make sure the correct things are set up in the back end in the workspace, like Teams or groups or wherever. And it's to make sure that the right audience is set up. So yeah, absolutely. There's another question here from Richard around what about applying sensitivity labels? That's a really good one. So I think in terms of what I showed you today, there's a way of applying sensitivities labels straight away. If, for example, you see something glaringly obvious that is of a risky nature where you want to apply that. But it's also typically part of a long-term strategy. And I guess, Mike, you've probably deployed these kinds of things in organizations. So maybe you want to go into that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's part of the information protection feature in M365, and we'd usually do an engagement with you as part of the project to work out what's sensitive and what labels need to be applied, i.e. using the classification of data. So yeah, we can do that as part of our projects, and yeah, it would be if you'd like to have a conversation about that, more than welcome.
Absolutely. Should we move on to the links? Feel free to ask questions. Oh, there are questions in the Q&A panel as well. Okay, let me have a quick look at that.
Where's that?
Okay, so Jack Neary's got one. Oh, there's a couple actually. Let me over and search results. Good question, Andy. On will Copilot enhance SharePoint search results, and does it leverage metadata or go deeper than that? There is a screenshot that I could have included in this, but I could have then made this deck 120 or something slides long. But we'll share examples in terms of the results that you get and the context of searching through Copilot. It will give you more enhanced search results using the semantic index. And there's almost like a Microsoft comparison of what was there previously with refiners and things and what you get now once Copilot has been turned on. So there's definitely an example that we can highlight for that. There was another question from Tristan, can check by user what data each user has access to, or is this a job for Copilot? Well, so within the tooling that I showed you around the guardrails, we can actually do searches per user. So you can then have a good understanding of what the user has got access to, which workspaces, which content, etc. So that could be a good way of highlighting that. Another question by Jack Neary. How does Copilot handle poor naming conventions of files and data, etc., like version 1 to final, etc., and what prevents it serving outdated? Well, that's a really good question around data quality. And the way we've tackled this is typically understanding, what do you want to do at the end of the day? Either you want to look at all the documents that are very, very, very similar, and I mean by that as 99% similar, where not only just the name, but also the contents of it. And again, there's some really great analysis technology that we have that has been developed for this reason, where you can then get rid of those, duplicates. But if it's a case of you have some other context and you want to build in metadata, that's something that, again, CSI as a partner here would then be able to leverage and build into that analysis kind of overview.
I think that's where your tool comes in. There's the addition. It goes beyond the native capabilities of Microsoft, and you get that better insight on what we've just discussed on the different versions of files, because I'm sure everyone does it, and I'm sure Copilot would be really good if you could say, can I have the latest version? But having the tool like AvePoint to run alongside it, I think you get the benefits of being able to look at your data and what is that dark data.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm going to continue with the questions. I think we are running a little bit over, so let's just do one or two more of those, and then so Jack Neary's got one. A lot of the governance tooling looks good but heavy. In practice, whose responsibility do you see this as? Teams or end users, or centralized within IT? If end users, how do you shift the culture to drive responsible adoption? Mike, I'll let you have a go at this one first, and then I'll kind of chip in.
Yeah. So, I mean, the governance has got to sit within the centralized IT, but then it's the adoption of the training with the users, really, to make them understand, well, not make them understand, but to try and adopt understanding of how to do good data management. So I think, that, again, a tool like AvePoint will help there. But there's definitely got to be user adoption and training to get there.
Absolutely.
Would you agree on that one?
Yeah. I think we see a wide spectrum of different requirements, right? And the tooling that we provide allows you to kind of go either side, or even stay in the middle and balance that governance with adoption, and making sure that we're not taking the end users out of their day-to-day activities too much, but we're also streamlining the kinds of things. I mean, what I'm showing you today could almost be transparent to end users to a large degree. So they wouldn't even know, for example, they're be controlling the workspaces in a particular way, or users, etc. And governing that in a responsible way is the key kind of balance that we have to strike from what we've seen. What are the benefits of using Copilot Studio to develop your own Copilot? That's a really great question, Scott. So I looked into this, and Copilot Studio is allowing you to have a very low hurdle, or a kind of a really good approach without you having to have a very steep learning curve. But the advantage that leverages is you can then connect multiple things together using things like the Graph API. You could have other sources, and I think myself and Mike talked about this as well, where again, Copilot Studio allows you to go beyond what you have within M365. So yeah, it's a great benefit. And
I did create my own Copilot using Copilot Studio. It was basic, but I did link it to a website, and then I published it in Teams. So it's all very possible. It's just again, it's all new. It's a bit of learning that people that you would need to do to create those Copilots and chatbots.
Absolutely.
And also with Power BI, Power Platform as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to touch upon, actually, because I think we discussed this as well, where if you've got a group of people that are makers, or that like developing these kinds of things, that's amazing. And to make sure we nurture that kind of creativity in the right way is super important. So understanding what you have is really important, but also if those makers get promoted, they create an amazing app or whatever, making sure that there's good ownership on that, to make sure that line of business app stays as it should be, with the right review, and making sure that that doesn't go off and break things is super important. So not only from an AvePoint perspective can we build resilience into that, so we can back those things up, but we can also ensure good governance, where it gives you good perspective on environments, workloads, how many apps you have, for example, across your tenancy. But it means that you can also help to make sure the review is done on a regular basis of those as well. We've got another question from Andy around what out-of-the-box tools within Microsoft can we leverage to help with data classification, analytics, initial buy-in from management stakeholders who already querying the cost of Copilot make it difficult to use. This brings us on to set up for anything, and we can help business build the business use case around third-party tools to improve data classification. So that's a really good one, Andy. I think a lot of these things in terms of making sure that you get the right buy-in is going to be from what you already have, but also building that into what your kind of goals are going to be as you go forward. Again, we can jointly with CSI assist you in building those business cases to not only understand what you have and kind of making sure that that's in the right state, but also taking that forward. Mike, you want to?
I think you covered it pretty well there. I mean, from a data classification point of view, within Microsoft M365, you can use information protection to get to it, to configure it. And obviously, depending what licensing you're on, it's how many features you've got to play with. So yeah, there's definitely lots of things to look at there.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to move one slide forward to the useful links. I will put get in touch as well afterwards. But within here, I think this is the blog that you've written, Mike, around Copilot and data protection. Yeah. There's also things around the Copilot solutions. We actually did a similar one of these webinars previously, so I've put a link into that one with Dux Raymond Sai and Matt Berg from Microsoft. And we've got a whole bunch of things, but the key thing that I want to highlight for Andy's question is there's an adoption area that Microsoft have created around Copilot. And not only does this give you like a lot of examples on what kind of things you can leverage within your business case and what kind of things you can expect, but there was a future of work report that was published earlier this week. And what this highlights is actually the results of kind of studies of what they've done over the last year in terms of what I started off with. So the Satya Nadella kind of March thing saying the age of AI is upon us. They've actually put in metrics like this one here, and I'm going to zoom in because it's super, super tiny, but they've actually looked at different kind of tasks that you do within Copilot in meetings, as well as in, for example, information retrieval. And this is done by organizations like BCG, so that's Boston Consulting Group. So all the kind of early adopters of Copilot have participated in this to give really good metrics on the kinds of things you can expect from Copilot in terms of improvements. That will really help you to build out the business cases and also look at where you can build the guardrails and those kinds of things we've been mentioning. Any further questions? I think there was one. I
think you've answered the ones that I can see. Not sure if there's anything more in the chat.
There's been a couple in the chat, guys. Also, can you flick back to
I think
the
we
slides
answered.
for the stages?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. So this is the kind of 3 stages for Copilot readiness and adoption. And this is the kind of comprehensive approach. Yes, to answer your question, Andrew, the slides will be sent over, so you will have access to all of these for you to view.
Right, that's fantastic. I think we've obviously run over, and thanks for the people that have stayed on, and thank you for joining today. Yatindra, I think we will say goodbye now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone for attending. It's been great to have some time with yourselves. And if there's any follow-ups, again, we've got the contact details here for Mike and myself. So yeah, keen to understand more. And if you need any assistance, let us know.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.